we are going to study about game theory. Game theory is a very interesting and scientific approach of international relations. Using games theory, we will be able to see how two states or multi-states acts in the global chessboard called the world. Games theory, just like systems theory, is very scientific in its approach. It was developed using mathematical model. In this session, I will try to analyze the games theory with few good examples. So a student will be able to equip himself or herself with a perspective how nations plays this game of international relations. To give you an example of important and what is the relevance of games theory, we should try to look and understand the relationship between the nations as a game. Just like in cricket, football, tennis, soccer, kabaddi, kho, lagore, there are players. The players in this games theory is the countries. There are rules, just like all other games will be having certain rules. There are certain rules in these games nations play. Very interestingly, for a student of political science, games theory is based on mathematical model. Shubik says games theory is a mathematical method for the study of some aspects of conscious decision making in situations involving the possibilities of conflict and cooperation. It deals with the process in which the individual decisions unit has only partial control over the strategic factors affecting its environment. This games theory operates on assumptions that states participates in these games to win influence, enhance its power, and it will do anything to make sure it enhances its power and win the game. The reason why we play a game is to win. The states play the game to win. Whether it is a war or making a very important decisions in the normal peacetime or diplomatic negotiation with hostile powers or a friendly power, states tend to make some decisions based on its winnability. It is a political process just like a game of chess. Diplomats use this games theory to make sure they win the bargain. Therefore, games theory is very interesting theory where we can understand the relationship between the nation and how the decisions are made, how the decisions are won, how important the state will pursue its goal using this particular mathematical model. As you know, in the last class, we studied about the world system approach, where we tried to identify the six basics model given by Morton Kaplan. In this session, we will go deep into how nations play the game. This theory was initially developed for economics. Later, this particular theory was used in various other fields, especially for international relations. Though the games theory is a part of decision-making approach in the field of mathematics, in behavioral sciences it has been incorporated into the models and experiments of both conflict and decision making. Now, let us try to illustrate few examples of how we can use games theory in practical aspects. Let us try to take the game of chicken. The game of chicken is a popular game played in America. Just imagine two bikers standing opposite to each other, and they're going to start the bike. Both of them are opposite to each other, and they will come at a very fast speed. When they're speeding, if they go ahead, if both the players will go ahead from the opposing side, it will result in a crash. So one player has to deviate. Who's going to chicken off? That's the question of the game's theory. Somebody has to blink first. If a player who swindles his bike, scared that the opposing player will come and crash to him, will be the loser. If you have seen some Hollywood movies, you'd encounter this particular situation. Similarly, when the countries goes to war, we face something called a zero-sum game. When they are fighting a war, each country wants to be the victor. They put all the resources into play so that the outcome will be the win. The country who blinks first will be the loser. Take the example of Kargil conflict. When Pakistan initiated the conflict, we went ahead with all our resources until we captured the Tiger Hill. Pakistan was unable to utilize its resources to match India. So therefore, they were forced to retreat, resulting in a victory for India. This is a classic game of chicken. So therefore, the game that I just illustrated for you describe a process of interaction in which players or decision makers are able to estimate the probable outcome, and they also make comparison of what will happen in the foreseeable future. For example, during the Kargil conflict, it was very vital for us to capture Tololing Heights and the Tiger Hills. David Bobrow suggests some of the very important properties of the situation in which games theory deals. Let me just illustrate what Bobrow suggests. First, they involve two or more players. It could be individuals or nations whose interests conflict. Very classical example is India and Pakistan. There are two nations, India and Pakistan. We have a conflict, maybe terrorism, Jammu and Kashmir, border issues. The second point, each player has two or more choices or strategies of how to proceed in the game. Let's give an example of Kargil again. Both India and Pakistan had a choice. Before the conflict, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee went to Lahore to greet his counterpart, General Musharraf, not General Musharraf, he was a general. Before General Musharraf, it was Nawaz Sharif. And went to Lahore in a bus. There was a very good bonhomie between Vajpayee and Sharif. They vowed that India and Pakistan will be having a good relationship. But what did General Musharraf do during that time? He had other plans. As soon as the winter set in, the Pakistani armed forces encroached deep inside Indian territory. So therefore, Pakistan could have reciprocated India's olive branch, or they could have chosen to go for a war. And here they chose the latter. So therefore, as Bobrow suggests in his second point, each player has two or more choices. Here, Pakistan had a choice to make peace and go to war. The third point, according to Bobrow, a play of the game consists of single simultaneous choice of strategy by each of the players. That means there is a strategy, but there are choices. There's a single choice. Do you want to go ahead and fight the war, or do you want to backtrack? The fourth point, the outcome of the game is determined once each player has chosen a strategy. Once Pakistan made a choice to go for a war, India had no option but to reciprocate a similar war. So therefore, the outcome of the game, as Bobrow suggests, is determined what strategy is chosen. And the last point Bobrow makes, each possible outcome is associated with a particular payoff or return. whether it's a positive or negative to each player. That means when you play the game, you can either win or lose. Pakistan lost, India won. Therefore, game theory can be used to understand the strategy of the players. Whether it's a nuclear war, nuclear conflict, or an aggression just like Pearl Harbor or Kargil, Korea, Vietnam. So, therefore, international politics is like a game. There are rules which are observed, there are rules which are violated. Therefore, game theory provides a model for studying world politics. However, some of the presumption of games theory may be questioned. Example, the game theory talks about zero-sum game, means there is always a winner, there's always a loser. However, some people say there are some types of international conflicts today where there are no winners. So, games theory fails to explain that. Therefore, the critic Kaplan says game theory has only limited applicability to most problems of international politics. Though we can understand India and Pakistan conflict during Kargil, the same cannot be understood when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to covert conflict with Pakistan. Carl Deutsch, another proponent of the games theory, just like John von Neumann, Oscar Borgström, suggests games theory usually assumes that most games have an end. But international politics resembles rather an unending game in which no great power can pick up its marbles and go home. That was a wonderful concluding statement given by Carl Deutsch. It's a never-ending game. We had world wars, we had cold wars, we had a transition phase, we had something called New Cold War. Now, after terrorism, we got one more conflict brewing between America and China. It's a never-ending game in which no great power can pick up the marbles and go home. In the next session, let us try to understand games theory in Canada.